the progress right now. So this is the brief introduction of Think India. I now request Sai Swarupa Iyer Garu to take on and discuss more about the book. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that very warm welcome. And it's wonderful to know about all the activities of Think India, and it's wonderful to be associated with Think India very regularly. It's a pleasure being here, and hopefully we try and spread some, the much needed cheer during these tough times. So let's start with my sincere prayers for the whole country to recover from this raging pandemic.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, So we can get started? Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Thank you.
So are we waiting for something, or?
No, ma'am. We're waiting for you to speak right now.
Okay. So I suggest we start as, we just do it as a conversation, because I'm not a, believer of
Yes, ma'am.
long one-sided talks about the books. So just to give a brief about Rukmini, Krishna's wife, this is about, Rukmini is very dear to Indian civilization in many, many ways. She's ancient and yet timeless. I don't want to use the word modern for her, because she belongs to, take any time zone, time period of history, present, future. I think she would equally belong to each of those, each of these generations, and we'll all have something or the other to connect to Rukmini, because and she has been that epitome of courage, epitome of boldness, that it's not just courage, it's like it's the wisdom to take the right decision about your future, the wisdom to, and then the perseverance to stand by that decision and execute it, and the commitment to stay by, take responsibility for, for the ones, for the decision being taken. So Rukmini has all those three capabilities, which are very inspiring, for a woman of any generation, right from the times of the Mahabharata to times of the future also, even the pandemic. So I would prefer if it is to be, conversational mode, and then we may take some, questions from the audience as well. I'd be really, really happy to answer them. So over to you, Akshara, Sharda.
Sure, ma'am. And I would love like how you're beginning to want it to have in a like a dual conversation and just not in a single path. So let me begin by like congratulating you, because in today's fast world, it is necessary for us to understand the constructions and deconstruction of the mythological stories of our cultural backgrounds, so that in this fast pacing world we can understand our cultural present and past and how it is impacting our lifestyle. And without a doubt, you are doing a wonderful job by writing in that genre. Uh, so my first question is, ma'am, what gave you the inspiration to start writing the mythological genres? Because in a time where you could have written any kind of fictional books, you chose to write about the female protagonists of the, like as you said, modern or ancient times. Time is a myth actually. But all those women who have led us towards an inspirational journey, what was your inspiration, ma'am?
So interesting question, Sharda. So mostly my inspiration comes from my parents and grandparents who started telling me these stories since my childhood, and then I turned into a storyteller to my to cousins who are younger than me. So that's how it and they grew with my imagination, and somehow I guess since childhood, the world of Mahabharata, especially the itihasas and puranas included, but especially the world of Mahabharata is something which was a part and parcel of my life. Whatever were my crisis, be it school level, education level, or any silly crisis, I would mentally turn to the people from the Mahabharata for their own solution or whatever. You know. So that way, it's like I would say I grew up with Mahabharata, and Mahabharata made me grow along with it. So that was the that's a matter of punya, I guess. And growing up, getting into academics and career, uh, I noticed that there was a lot of misinformation that was spreading around the masses, right? Popular media has been a boon in terms of disseminating, storylines, but along with disseminating the basic story, popular media has also perpetuated a lot of misunderstandings and distortions about our epics, the itihasas. So, because again, then there was a generation of writers who started viewing our itihasas, especially the female, perspectives in certain lens, very limited lens, and because of a certain stranglehold they had upon the media, only those perspectives, gained the mileage, and it reached a state where the true text, the original text, is now being rejected by many people, who because they haven't read it, right? So the facts from the original text are they seem like a myth right now. So, for example, a very interesting example that I'd like to give from Rukmini itself, there is a scene about Draupadi Swayamvara, right? And there's a scene about Draupadi Swayamvara. And, in this, Krishna and, the Yadavas have basically decided to abstain from the Swayamvara. Right, so we see other suitors trying their luck. They try and fail because it's the challenge is quite a big challenge. It needs an archer of high capability to, so. And even the bow that was placed was a very strong bow. Many suitors could not even string the bow. Forget shooting the Matsya Yantra, right? And Vyasa, in the original epic, Vyasa has given the details like which how much gap was there between the target and the shot arrow for each of the archers. So he has given for Jarasandha how many, what was the gap, for Shishupala what was the gap, for Duryodhana what was the gap, for Karna what was the gap, right? So we know that Karna actually tried and failed in the Swayamvara, but in the popular media, what's being perpetuated is मैं सूतपुत्र से विवाह नहीं करूंगी, is what is perpetuated, and that is a part of only one edition of the 1,000 recensions of Mahabharata that we have. So the critical edition rejects that part of Draupadi insulting Karna, but that became such a popular part of our understanding and fueled certain undesirable narratives around ancient India. So sorry, I took a lot of time to explain. So these are the kind of narratives that need to be countered so that we actually know our past. Forget being, we can decide whether we want to be proud of it. If we know the real past, we would automatically be proud of it. We will automatically strive to be, worthy descendants of that legacy. But for anything to happen, we have to know what exactly happened in the past and what exactly is described in the source texts. Now, the challenge of the source text is that just taking the Mahabharata, right, the critical edition, when translated into English, comes into 10 volumes of each of 500 to 600 pages each. That is your 6,000 pages, 5,000 to 6,000 pages, including the Harivamsham, which is a appendix. Correct. Dr. Bibek Debroy has translated. So any of you who are interested in knowing the Mahabharata end to end, I would strongly recommend Dr. Debroy's translations. If you are English readers, if you are Indic language readers, I would recommend any translation of Gita Press, be it Telugu or Hindi or any other Indic language. But that is something, it's daunting, right? The exercise of reading 5,000 pages is daunting. That's where the responsibility lies in with the storytellers. Again, as storytellers, I'll take creative liberties, but it's very important to take that kind of creative liberty which retains a character's, the word is garima. I'm not able to find an English equivalent of garima, but the garima of each character has to be preserved while narrating a story, so that reading Rukmini, if any of you feel inspired to read the Bhagavatam, Harivamsha, Vishnu Purana in original, then that would be a mission accomplished for me as a storyteller.
Wonderful, ma'am. That's like truly insightful. And it is true that, all these characters and all the Puranas that have been written, they bear a very strong predicament on our life and on the characteristics and on the people we become. And through your book, Rukmini, you have shown that a woman is both capable of showing love, mercy, devotion, and at the same time, when tested, can show her fierce nature and courage in the face of distress. So, what is the exact message that you want to give to the youth of today, where uh, reading these kind of text is not popular? Everyone is on the bandwagon of the new genres. So how do you intend to revive all of this, ma'am?
So one thing here is that I would be very arrogant. It would be very arrogant of me if I thought that I was reviving this, uh, because this is the world of Veda Vyasa, and it's a real world. I would like to say, I'm just quoting another scholar's words here. His name is Dr. Vishwa Adluri. So again, those of you who are interested in Mahabharata research should look up his works. Dr. Vishwa Adluri is his name. And he says the world built by Vedavyasa is that of a hyper reality. There may be times where even our world, the world that we consider as reality, may become unreal or fictional. But the world of Mahabharata is going to endure the test of times. That is what Dr. Adluri says. But again, given your question, Sharda, so Rukmini Kanya, our culture has a what do you say, a kind of continuum that preserves that has traditions which preserve these stories. Like again, because we are Think India, Telangana, I assume a lot of you would be knowing Telugu. So most of you may have heard the name of this poet called Bammera Potanamatya. And Potanamatya wrote Bhagavatam in Telugu. It's called Srimad Andhra Mahabhagavatam. So in our Telugu households, when a girl comes to marriable age, right? And so before they formally start looking for a suitable husband for a girl, every girl is urged to read Rukmini Kalyanam from Andhra Mahabhagavatam. So doesn't it seem interesting? It's an interesting paradox, right? So traditionally, that in your tradition, you are encouraging a girl, an unmarried girl, to read a story of elopement, right? So that's the what do you call that's the interesting paradox, as well as that's where we have to realize the timelessness of our culture. We are not yes, we work to preserve what is dear to us, we work to preserve what has made us, but at the same time we are not somebody who favor rigidity. Hindu civilization is not something which favors rigidity, it favors dynamism. Which is why you have, stories, all stories that, you are encouraged to read Sundarakandam when you are going through distress. You are encouraged to read Sundarakandam, which is the most adventurous part of Ramayana, Hanuman going and exploring Lanka, where he has not even seen Sita properly, but, he goes and explores Lanka. It's a totally unknown zone to him. I mean, of course, he's a strong guy. He's a hero. We won't have a hero like Hanuman again, but, he's the, so that, so the Sundarakandam is like that, full of adventure, full of lessons, life lessons for us, to remember, imbibe when we face tough situations in life. So all our textual readings, the spiritual textual readings, are full of those inspiring tales. So they will find themselves, they'll find ways to revive themselves, or they'll find their own way back to mass imaginations. And it's our punya, or the matter of our good fortune to be tools enabling that. That's the thing. So our to short answer, stories from Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Purana Itihasas are evergreen. They don't have a time limitation. Even the best example is when the first wave of pandemic was raging, the Ramayana serial of 1980s was telecasted, and it beat the audience of Game of Thrones, right? More than some 5 times the audience of Game of Thrones watched the Ramayana serial, right? And it's not something so visually modern, or it's a simple adaptation to a screen without much of without many much of departing from the main storyline, I would say. But but it it is so dear to people's, the mass imagination, that the audience just swell, right? That is just a small example of how dear are Ramayana and Mahabharata. Despite the efforts of certain malicious elements, they would remain dear to hearts. It's just that we have to work for that connect to be preserved. That's all.
Truly, ma'am, truly remarkable. My next question, before I go to my next question, I'd request our participants to put any questions they have in the chat box, and Akshara will be taking them up and asking them on your behalf, ma'am.
Sure, sure.
Ma'am, there is this one question. When I began reading the book, you have given a very vivid intro, ma'am. Instead of beginning with her, the childhood or teenage life, you suddenly came to the end where, though she is devastated and in denial that, the love of her life, Krishna, is no more. but she shows this sheer passion for altruism, for the well-being of her people, so that they are safe and sound and reach the place safely.
Safer place.
What were you thinking when you thought you want to begin it, in a very different manner? Because it very much relates to the current pandemic time, ma'am, where there are half people who are in denial and who don't want to accept that something might happen to them, and
I know.
they should take measures. And there are people who have accepted the fate but are in full in sorrow. And then
Fighting.
there are others who are working very hard and going in the direction to save people. So was it your like forethought, or how, ma'am?
Definitely not a forethought, because that chapter was something I wrote in April 2019, when none of us had the slightest clue of what would happen. So again, as a storyteller, it's a challenge to uh, visualize a character like Rukmini, like Draupadi or Sita or any of those ancient women, to mentally see them in action itself is a challenge that requires a lot of, yes, reading, yes, but also meditation into what has been written, right? That conscious thinking of, that focused and conscious thinking about those characters. It's meditation, it's prayers. I will not say it otherwise. And the best of the character comes out during, when he or she is in adversity. That's where the character shines, and that's what gives us a grip over, that's what gives me as a storyteller a grip over how she behaves during better times. So that's how, that was my inspiration. Because and another, this one is like, I'm a big time lover of Krishna, Lord Krishna. So and even I was a bit afraid of how to write, how it would affect me when I write the Krishna Rivyana chapter. It was, in a way, it felt beyond me. And I was in that half mind of whether to tell the publisher ki, I cannot do it, I cannot bring myself to write that painful chapter. But then it just struck me that, Rukmini, even in the Mahabharata, Rukmini and the otherwise in the core text, what I'm saying is, they stay till everybody reaches Indraprastha, and Vajra is the grandson of Krishna. So he is crowned as the king of Indraprastha. The Pandavas would have moved to Hastinapura. After their victory, the capital is Hastinapura. So Indraprastha is just one of the cities, but they managed to shift there until Vajra gets crowned as a king. That was the only then Rukmini's responsibilities come to an end. Once they are all, totally safe inland. So that's the strength that even Vedavyasa saw in Rukmini. So I just wanted to try and visualize that part, which is why I started with, seemingly it's a chapter of Mahabharata every reader dreads to read. What happens after Krishna? Without Krishna, what is Mahabharata, or what is Bhagavatam, or what is that world itself? We can't imagine. So, and it just struck me that if I can get that right, I think the rest of book would be in its place. So, interesting question.
Yes, ma'am, because it struck me throughout the book, ma'am, because throughout the book is a different narration, and the way you began it was on a whole different level. So it really, as a reader, it like I could really appreciate Rukmini on a different level after reading the short intro that you have given before beginning the chapter, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yes, ma'am. And may I ask, what was your preparation while writing the book, ma'am? I mean, what were the authentic sources that you referred, and how long did it take you to write, and did you face any turmoil while writing, because these are the characters that have great weightage and are revered by millions.
Yes,
So
exactly.
was there, like, what was the pressure on you while you were, because you were representing something that has, people, those names are not just words, they are emotion for, like,
Exactly.
from a child, like, whole set of generation. So what was
Exactly.
the pressure that you had when you were representing them uh, in today's generation, so that you deliver it perfectly?
So, the challenge again is multifold, Sharda, because again, as you said, these are just not names. These are something which mattered just to just to give you a picture of what Krishna meant to the Pandavas from Potana Bhagavatam. Let me just recite a poem. After Krishna Niryan, after Krishna passes away, the way Arjuna comes and describes the void in their lives to Yudhishthira, right? It's like he says, Mana Sarathi, Mana Chuttamu, Mana Bandhuvu, Manadu Sakhudu, Mana Bandhavudun, Mana uh, Vipudu, Gurudu, Devara, Manalanu, Vidanadi Chaniye, Manujadhisha. I know all of you may not be able to understand Telugu, but it's like, our Sarathi. See, Sarathi is a charioteer. That's a job, right? The functions are very defined, and that guy is paid. You pay him salary or whatever, and he renders certain services to you. It's very defined. Then he says, mana chuttamu, that is our relative. When it becomes a relative, then it's not, the functions are not that clearly defined. A relative generally has a stake in your well-being, and you have a stake in his well-being, but it's not as defined as a employer-employee relationship. And what else? What else comes? And then friendship, right? And friendship comes, level beyond the bandhutva, because there is no blood tie here, and he's still, there is that bond between you. Then as a sakha, right? The closeness, there is that bond is not duty bound, but it is of heart, right? So you are connected to Krishna as there is that defined relationship. Then there is this fluid relationship. Then there is that heart to heart relationship. Then he says, "Vana Vibhudu Gurudu Devara." He is like our Lord, our Guru, and our Lord, and our God. So and the God is the most, it's challenging to define what is the function of God. We can never, the function of God is something we can never describe in words, right? So from the most described relationship of an employer-employee, of a Rathi Sarathi, to the most abstract relationship of between the devotee and the Bhagavan. Krishna was everything to them. And the whole challenge of a modern storyteller is in understanding this depth of each of these characters, not just Krishna, but each of these characters, and presenting it in English, in understanding English to the whole English reading population, right? That is a process. So I would say, from sources, if you ask me for sources, it is mostly the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam, which has details about Rukmini Kalyana, like the way she sends the message across to Krishna, the way Krishna comes to rescue her, and then the way they settle down and have a family life together. That is all described in Bhagavatam, Harivansham, and Vishnu Purana. And Mahabharata gives you the macro worldview, right? And Bhagavatam gives you the household worldview. And my real challenge was in reconciling these both. Because, in Mahabharata, it's like there is a family feud that has grown to like massive stages, which got 18 Akshauhinis, that is 4 million soldiers have been dragged into war. And let's not even imagine what kind of a dark age that would have passed just after the war. So there is an impending doom, and then Bhagavatam has this very insulated, happily ever after picture of Krishna's household, right? So how do the balancing between these two images of, Mahabharata as well as Bhagavata was what came as a challenge to me. And that's where I would, I'm licensed as a storyteller, I'm licensed my own creative liberties. So that's where creative liberty helped me reconcile it. Like how I would say Satyabhama, because there's one, the risk I took was in skipping one very important story about Rukmini, that is the Tulabhara story of Rukmini. That's skipped because I could not imagine Satyabhama to be a rival of Rukmini. Again, I said I am a big lover of Lord Krishna, and if I today meet another woman who loves Krishna as much as I love him, I don't think the first feeling would be something of rivalry. It would be of sisterhood. It would be of sisterhood, which is why my Satyabhama and Rukmini were not rivals. I won't deny the incidents of Bhagavatam. That's not my intention. But when I look at it from a Mahabharata worldview, I see Krishna's family as that kind of ideal. Maybe ideal is the word, or ideal. So they know to stick together. They just know to stick together through tough times, and that was my aim to convey to readers.
Ma'am.
And I'm sure, ma'am, like after the readers read the book, your aim will be conveyed, ma'am. And now I'd request Akshara to take up the questions that are in chat box.
Oh wow, there are
Over
a
to you,
lot of
Akshara.
questions.
Have been
Thanks a
eagerly
lot,
waiting.
Sharada. It was a pleasure interacting.
Pleasure was all mine, ma'am. Over to you, Akshara.
Ma'am, so the first question posted by Nandini Rikhi is, what are some of the best works of Mahabharata? Also, can you please name some of the best translations of Mahabharata and Vishnu Puran in Hindi?
Hindi, when it comes to Hindi translation, I would, the first recommendation from my side would be the versions by Geeta Press.
Okay.
So yes, don't look beyond Geeta Press. I mean, start with Geeta Press and then, do your own exploration of other recensions or editions. Yes. And the best works on Mahabharata, now I would go to the, once you have read the, if you are reading in English, please refer to critical edition. So a little bit about critical edition of Mahabharata here, because that's something which nobody knows. There is this institute called Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune. And there was this very great scholar called Vishnu Sitaram Sukthankar, who wanted to collate various editions of Mahabharata and explore what was the common memory of these ashrams. So each of the ashrams, gurukuls, universities, they would have somehow preserved Mahabharata as it was passed through their guru parampara, right? That way there were around 1,000 recensions of Mahabharata. When Suthankar and his team of Pandits started about their project, there were 1,000 recensions of Mahabharata. So those scholars, they screened through every edition, and then they mapped a story family tree. Like say there is, say Varanasi has an ashram. I'm just, just illustrating an example. Varanasi has an ashram and a guru who taught Mahabharata, and both his disciples go in different directions. One may have gone to Gujarat, one may have gone to South, and they would have started their own schools or ashramas. And some changes, minor changes may have made their way through, as it got. So they constructed a whole family tree of this epic and the way it would have changed. And then they condensed everything into a common memory. That's basically they retained whatever was common through all these editions. That's called the critical edition, and the translation of that critical edition to English language has been done by Dr. Bibek Debroy, published by Penguin. So do please check out those who are interested. And coming to this is the source text. And then we have scholarly works, like works of scholars who have read the Mahabharata and have given their own interpretations, right? And so in that, I refer to the works of Altekar. I forgot his initials, but he has a lot of research about how the Yadava confederacy worked. Like they were a republican system. They were not a monarchical system like the Pandavas, and the Kurus followed a monarchical system. But Yadavas followed a republican system where there was only a token head, like Ugrasena was a token head. Krishna and Balarama were the lords of a certain section of Yadavas. Satyaki was the lord of a certain section. Satrajit was a lord of certain section. Then there are these Satwatas, Vrishnis, Andhakas. There were certain, all these sub-clans. Each of the clan had a representation and they followed a republican system. And women used to be active participants in the Sabha of Yadavas, which was Sudharma. So here is where we get these nuggets of information which help us to counter any malicious narrative against Indian civilization or Indic civilization, right? And another work which emotionally connected with me was a 7-volume work called Krishnavatara by K.M. Munshi, who is the founder of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. So he founded Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. He was there in the constitutional drafting committee. So he wrote this classic called Krishnavatara, which is probably, the first fictional work on Krishna in English language. And that was the book which I would say turned me into a writer, because I could see how though Krishna is reimagined in flesh and blood, he retained the nature of that Ishvara or Bhagavan, and that's what brought Krishna to me alive in front of my eyes. So I would recommend Krishnavatara to anybody who is interested.
I hope, Nandini Ricky, your questions have been answered. The next question is by Divyan Srivastav, ma'am. The question is that people have often compared patriarchy with Indian culture. But when we talk about Rukmini, don't you think that Rakshala Viva of Lord Krishna and Rukmini was very bold step by Rukmini and debunks all the propagandas regarding a patriarchal society prevailing at that time?
Sure, yes. So Divyan Srivastav, right? So yes, Rukmini's story is a standing example of how dynamic our civilization was. I would repeat this. I won't get tired of repeating this time and again, because the patriarchy, in that sense, was adharma. Patriarchy is not dharma, the way it was being forced on Rukmini, right? I know people will again compare Manuvada to patriarchy, but Manu himself describes 8 types of vivahas, right? Brahma Vivaha, Prajapatya Vivaha, Deva Vivaha, Manav Vivaha, Gandharva Vivaha, Rakshasa Vivaha, Paisachika Vivaha, right? And in our system, I'm sorry to use a very unparliamentary word here. The word called bastard does not exist in our system. Every union is recognized. Every union is recognized, but those unions are, those marital unions are recommended which have the consent of the woman. Right? In Brahma Vivaha, where say the typical arranged marriage, you can't arrange a marriage without the bride being, bride giving her consent. It's not that Brahma Vivaha. when the bride is forced into a wedding, it's not Brahma Vivaha. The gods are going to be angry. When you force a woman into a union that she does not like, the gods are going to be angry on the whole family. That's what I tried to emphasize here, because when you totally force her, bodily force her into a wedding that she's not into, that vivaha is paisachika vivaha, basically. It's not a tradition, it's just a drama of tradition, but in nature it is paisachika vivaha. It's only the pisachas who are the witnesses to such a union. The devas will go away, Brahma will go away, Prajapatis would go away, Gandharvas would go away from that kind of wedding. Only the pisachas would be the witness to that kind of a wedding. So whatever was being planned with Shishupala was a farcical, Brahma Vivaha, but in spirit it was a paisachika vivaha, because it did not have the consent of Rukmini. And in eloping with Krishna, in a way Rukmini did a big favor on her family, but had she been forced, the gods would have been angry with the whole kingdom. She saved herself, yes, and she also saved her kingdom from the wrath of gods. So that is so there is an element of liberty and there is an element of responsibility, and Rukmini is somebody who balanced both. Very wonderfully balanced both. So yes, Rukmini's story is one story, a proud story we have against any malicious campaign about patriarchy in India. Not just Rukmini's story, just take any woman from Mahabharata. Each marriage is so unique. Shakuntala is Gandharva Vivaha. She asserted herself. Savitri, her father was so, helpless. In the sense, he says, I cannot find a man who is capable of being your husband, Savitri. So you tour all over India, you find somebody who you like. So that was Savitri's. Draupadi's was a Swayamvara. So any of these, take any woman, each marriage is so unique, and each woman has her own unique place in our civilization. So that's the beauty of Indic civilization, Divyansh. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is by Rashmi. Rukmini knew Krishna as a person who came onto earth to complete his responsibility. So her question is whether she could understand that Radha was one of her forms, or was it any other?
So Radha, when we come to Radha, I have to be very careful here, because to mention as a fact, Radha is not explicitly mentioned in any of these root texts. That is Mahabharata, Bhagavata, Vishnu Purana, Harivamsha. Radha is not mentioned. Right? It's only from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana as well as Devi Bhagavatam. Those have a mention of Radha and a Goloka. There Krishna is not Vishnu exactly. Right? Krishna and Radha, they are divine, they are devatas who lived in Goloka and who came down to earth. And there is a whole sampradaya which believes in that, in that pantheon and that story of Krishna and Radha. So when you go to Radha, right, it's a totally different plane of existence. That is, it's a subtle existence. So the way our traditional scholars have reconciled Radha is by declaring her as a Gudhanaika. She's a heroine who is not visible. And you have to really, really understand Krishna, go to the maximum depth of understanding Krishna to actually see Radha. And Radha is that Ahladini Shakti of Krishna. That is Krishna's Ananda. Right, the Krishna's state of being unaffected, being blissful and unaffected, around whatever happens, irrespective of whatever happens around him. That smile on Krishna's face is what is Radha. So there is never I know there are a lot of stories about, again, some rivalry between Rukmini and Radha. That would be equal to saying Rukmini doesn't like Krishna's smile, right? That doesn't make sense. So there's no, what do you say, rivalry between Rukmini and Radha.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I hope, Rashmi, your questions have been answered. Ma'am, another question from Raj Rishi is that how significant a role do you think Rukmini played an important role in changing Lord Krishna's character during his lifetime on Earth?
So, nobody can change Krishna's character. That's my belief. I'm a practicing Hindu who worships Krishna. So, he is that Purna Avatara. We call that Purna Avatara is where, an Avatara brings about that transformation in the society. So, Krishna, in action, he brought transformation. He changed power, basically. A rotting power system existed, like be it Jarasandha, be it Kauravas. He has caused a transformation in action. Then he has given us the Bhagavad Gita. Right? So in thought, word and action, he has caused that transformation in the society. Basically, Dharma Samsthapana. He's come for Dharma Samsthapana. That's what he declares in the Bhagavad Gita. So I wouldn't say Rukmini changed Krishna, but in a way, she was the one who held Krishna's fort in his absence. I would say that. She's that befitting bride of Krishna, because it's not easy being Krishna's wife. It's I would say rather Sita's life would have been much simpler than Rukmini's life was. I take the liberty of saying this because Rama is an understandable character. I know he stands, he wouldn't care for his own welfare in front of his people's welfare. It's always always Rama's sacrifices come from a position of strength. They are not from a position of helplessness. He could have chosen the easy path, but he chooses the difficult path. That is Rama. And, Sita is somebody who keeps with him, sometimes physically, but at times, when she understood that even separation would keep Rama in power, she did that. That is the, but it's tough to practice, but simple to understand. And Sita is committed to do that. But with Rukmini, the challenge is about second guessing Krishna, because he's not straightforward about what he wants to do. He's, that epitome of unpredictability, because the times were like that. The times were where dharma, the tenets of dharma were themselves being twisted and, like how we see our history being twisted by various malicious forces. Such forces even existed during the times of Krishna. So the avatara lakshana, like the characteristic of the avatara needed then was also to be unpredictable. If you are predictable, you'd be beaten. So it was, it was requirement that Krishna stayed unpredictable, and to be by the side of this unpredictable God is a huge challenge, and that was the challenge that Rukmini, as well as the other wives of Krishna, very skillfully played that role. Here, let me again say, it was an important, Krishna's household was an important factor in the macro element of Mahabharata, because once the Pandavas were sent away in the Vanavas for Vanavasa, the children of the Pandavas grew up in Krishna's household under Rukmini's care. Right. So in the absence of Draupadi, she and Subhadra were the ones who brought up the children of Draupadi, the sons of Draupadi. So just understand the multiplicity of the roles that Rukmini had to play. Yes, she had to be a part of Sabha of the Yadavas, and then they would have various income streams. So she had to be active on the financial side, and she has to be a mother, a wife, and a daughter-in-law. She has all her family roles to play, a social role to play, and a professional role to play. And so because Krishna would be away most of the time, he would be fighting wars, or he would be collecting information, he would be traveling. So Krishna's travels were are captured in detail. So Rukmini had to hold the fort in his absence. So that way, Rukmini was that complementary force to the physical side of Krishna. That's what I would say. I'm taking a lot of time to answer each of the questions. I hope people are not getting bored or anything.
Just
like
two
that.
more questions, ma'am.
Sure.
So, the question from Satya is, ma'am, could you explain Krishna's supportive nature regarding Draupadi's marriage with Pandavas?
Sorry. Yeah. Draupadi's supporting marriage. What is
Krishna's
it?
supportive nature regarding Draupadi's marriage.
So Krishna had an idea that the Pandavas. So okay, let us come to the story before Draupadi Swayamvara. She was conceived as a fitting bride to Arjuna. That's why Drupada performed. Sorry. So Drupada performs that Putra Kama Yajna with these Brahmarshis called Yaja and Upayaja, and begets Drishtadyumna as well as Draupadi, because he's impressed with Arjuna and he wants Arjuna on his side, basically. So, but then the Pandavas go to this Varanavata for a festival, and Duryodhana tries to burn them in that Lakshagraha. And Pandavas escape that, but the whole world thinks that they are dead. And in this Draupadi Swayamvara, it's only Krishna, right, who has, of course, Vidura knows because he himself has helped Pandavas escape, but it's only Krishna who knows that people like Pandavas will not have that kind of death. They are born of gods. They would go only after their purpose is served. Right, so they should be around somewhere, waiting for favorable time, and getting married to Draupadi gives them that power to come out and declare themselves. Right, so he knows that Pandavas are around, but they just have to come out. So that's why Krishna, as well as the whole Yadava camp, they abstain from the Swayamvara, and they just come to support Draupadi during the whole thing. And then we know that the Pandavas come out. Everybody tries and fails, and Pandavas come out, and Arjuna fulfills the challenge of the Swayamvara and marries
Yes.
Draupadi.
Yes, ma'am. One last question from the chat box is from Kogisetti Karthik. What's the reason for Gandhari's curse to Krishna when his cause was to stand by Dharma?
So again, see here, Gandhari, let me say that I have a bias against Gandhari in this whole incident. So let me declare that on the onset. Yes, it would not seem fair. Gandhari's curse on Krishna does not seem fair, especially when we see that her sons were the cause behind the whole mess that happened. I mean, anybody reading Mahabharata in detail would say that, a lot of blame lay on Duryodhana, and a greater blame was there on Dhritarashtra for letting Duryodhana, act like the way. And she is also partly to blame, because you cannot close yourself to whatever is happening, just as this one. So, which is why I think a lot of us would have a problem with Gandhari's Shapa to Krishna. But it also springs from a belief that Krishna is all powerful. So her anguish was that Krishna had the power to stop all that from happening. And her anguish was not just because her sons died. It was also because, Draupadi lost her sons. Draupadi lost all her 5 sons. And there were like women widowed, at all ages, who were weeping, and Gandhari's anguish was the combined anguish of all those women. So that is why, which is why she curses Krishna. That was emotional, you know, which is when Vedavyasa comes and Vedavyasa comes and scolds Gandhari there. He, you know, you are just taking that very limited stance in understanding Krishna when you think that, you know, okay, all your Yadavas are safe and, you know, all my family has been destroyed. So you are, you know, even your family will be destroyed. That was the, you know, in effect, that was Gandhari's curse. But then Vedavyasa comes and explains the nature of Krishna, saying ki it would be a mistake if you thought of Krishna as separate from everybody who died. So he says there is, you know, in every soldier who died, you know, whenever a soldier died, a part of Krishna died. And, you know, when there is a triumph of dharma, Krishna triumphed. And when there somebody was defeated, Krishna felt the pain of that defeat. So he was not insulated from anything. Krishna took on every emotion because, you know, he is that all-pervading Vasudeva, right? He's all-pervading God. He felt it. He felt each of the laws. He feels it, but yet he stood up for dharma, which is what, which is the realization that Veda Vyasa gives us after this episode.
Rightly explained, ma'am. I think the audience here would totally agree your justification. And before we come to the cessation, there is one participant who has given a very useful information, and I think the audience would benefit from it. Is that there is a book called as Ujjwala Neelamani, which talks about stories of Krishna and Radha and the Leela that are not chronicled in the mainstream scriptures. Same
Okay.
with Gujarati folk songs that talk about different unchronicled Leelas of Krishna and Radha, that ever mysterious empress of his Bhakti Samrajya, ma'am. So
Oh,
thank you, Dikshit, for that piece
thank
of
you. I
information.
learned something new. So that is Dikshit, right? So I learned something new from this. So thank you, Dikshit. We'll look up Ujjwala Neelamani.
Yes, ma'am. And the final question is that what are your future plans on the next books, ma'am? That is the final question, and then we'll come to the cessation, ma'am.
Sure. So just as an artistic, I have written about 4 novels which are basically set in the world of Mahabharata. You know, Draupadi, Rukmini, Abhaya, and Mauri. The other novel on Vishpala, that's Avishi, is set in the Rigveda. So at currently, I would like to take a break, temporary break from the world of Mahabharata to explore some near history. Mahabharata is our ancient history, but some near history around you know, Vijayanagara or you know, before and after Vijayanagara kind of period is what I'm trying to explore, because there are a lot of unsung heroes and heroines around that time, and the regional history they would be known, like say Vema Reddy. Those people in Telangana would be knowing Kapaya Nayaka and Vema Reddy, who held the fort before Vijayanagara became powerful. These were the two local heroes who kept the, you know, the light of Dharma glowing. And the same way, you know, after Vijayanagara disintegrated in Karnataka, there's this royal family called Keladi Venkatappa Nayaka and his descendants and Chennammaji. Then there are the Maratha warriors. So there's a whole beautiful universe to be explored there, because our history has been told from the perspective of those invaders. So which is why it totally focuses on the defeats of India. And the narrative focuses on the defeats of India, because the whole curriculum was designed with the first curriculum was defined by, you know, somebody who doesn't belong to India. So it doesn't make sense for us to, you know, keep on clinging to that. I'm not saying this with any jingoism or that emotional patriotism, because there's there are a lot of victories, very significant victories, which we don't know about, and that doesn't make sense, right? So our history cannot be defeat of just the renunciation by Ashoka, defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan, and defeat of Vijayanagara. Then our history cannot be that. If we were like just losers, we would have been wiped out. But we haven't been wiped out, and we are still a vibrant civilization. And the reason for that is are our ancestors who for some reason are not as popular. And I want to be active in bringing out some of those stories also. So I'm exploring a couple of stories. So let's see what happens and how it turns out.
Thank you, ma'am.
That would
Thank
be a
you.
Thanks a lot. It was a
wonderful
pleasure
initiative.
interacting with you all. Always, I love all sessions with Think India. So, looking for a continued association with you guys.
I think today's evening was like we were all blessed today, ma'am, since we got to know about so many new perspectives and new information regarding so much, ma'am. So we are truly thankful to you that you came today here, and the chat box is filled with the responses from the audience of how thankful they are for attending this amazing session. So we wish you all the best for your future ventures, ma'am.
Thank you.
And
Thanks a
thank you
lot.
once again, ma'am.
Thank you.
Namaste,
Thanks
ma'am.
a lot. Yes.
Handing it over to Akshara.
I'd like to thank Shri Divyan Srivastav, who is the state convener of Think India Telangana, who's present with us today. Now I'd like to hand it over to Namit Reddy to present the vote of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for taking out time and throwing light on some of the critical topics from the ancient Indian literature that have relevance in our day-to-day lives today. Thank you to Ms. Sharda and Ms. Akshara for hosting this wonderful session. I'd like to thank everyone present in this session and would like to let you know that the book is now available. Like you can purchase the hard copy on Amazon and Flipkart. Do purchase it to get a deeper insight on what ma'am has just discussed right now. Um, uh, we are delighted by the response you people have given us to the session. And once again, thanking Sai Swarupa ma'am. We are
Thank you.
grateful to her for taking out time and making this session possible. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you. Namaste.